So, ladies and gentlemen, music has been heavily devalued, and J. Cole, in a recent interview, talked about why he believes that is the case. He believes that streamers have ruined how people critique music and basically how they have digested music in recent years. And we're going to talk about if he is correct and some of the other things that might have affected how people critique and digest music. But before we do, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button. So J. Cole, he sat down for an interview with another podcast. He's in the midst of a press run. It's a questionable press run, but he's in the midst of it nonetheless, so it is what it is. And he had an interesting conversation with these guys where he talked about why he believes that streamers are ruining music and ruining how people critique music, and also basically he was saying how people digest music, right? Because now people, they don't have to go through the same trouble to access the music, right? He talked about how in previous generations they would have to go to a record store, which obviously takes a lot more time and money because you got to physically get up and get to that record store, whether you're walking, whether you're driving, riding a bike, taking a train, the bus, a cab, whatever. You have to physically get out your house and get there, and then you got to spend $20+ on just one album, which obviously is a much bigger deal because this is all you got, so you're much more likely to want to appreciate it because you already paid for it and you're hoping that you like it. But then also he mentioned that the streamers have taken away the experience aspect of it, the real life experience aspect of it, because he mentioned how his parents used to work for the military and they would go buy the new album and then go to their job with their coworkers and play the album, and everybody would just kind of hang out for a little bit and party and stuff. And I get what he's saying. I don't think that's 100% true, because sometimes these streamers, when they stream a new album, sometimes that could be the new age version of that sort of experience that J. Cole is talking about. However, I kind of get it, of course, because even though it is a new age version of that, it's not as it may not feel as personal now because people are not physically going to one setting together to sit amongst each other and hang out. It's more so just people connecting through computer screens. But I understand what he is getting at, of course. Now, as far again, and to go back to the fact that you had to pay as far as time and money, that in itself is why I believe music, one of the reasons I believe music has been heavily devalued, right? Because what J. Cole really was hinting at in that clip was music has been devalued. And he believes that streamers are to blame, but to me, I think it's a bunch of things in the environment that are to blame, right? Because in the example he used, you got to go to a record store and pay $20 for one album, right? Whereas now, music is basically free for the average consumer. For the average consumer, it's either free or it's very inexpensive because you're paying $10 to rent the music from these streaming platforms, which it's not gonna provide the same connection or investment that previous generations would have with their favorite songs and their favorite artists, right? Because now you have an overabundance of content at your fingertips. So unfortunately, because human psychology is stupid, most people don't appreciate it, because most people don't appreciate things that are free. I can give you game-changing $1 million advice about how to make some more money and where to invest it right now. But if I give it to you for free, you're not, because human psychology is ridiculous, you're not going to appreciate it. You're not going to respect it. You're not even going to listen to what I said. It'll go in one ear and out the other. But then on the flip side, some scammer could come along being flashy and showing videos of them on a boat, making themselves seem bigger than life. They could come along, they'll sell you some $1,000 course, or some $10,000 course, some $20,000 course, giving you all these promises that you're never gonna actually be able to cash in on. These empty promises about how great your life will be if you listen to their advice, and then you'll pay for it in a heartbeat. And then when they give you the information, you'll hang on to every word. Meanwhile, the information they're charging you for is only half of the information that I gave you. But because you paid for it, You actually listened, you paid more attention to it, and you actually are under the impression that it's better than what it is. And again, that's just how most people operate. And the same thing applies to music. Most people have never paid for music in their life. Most people who, unless you actually make music, right? I'm an artist, so it costs me, I spent a lot of money trying to produce, trying to, the process, like my last album, for example, I released it a few years ago, right? I plan on releasing something else soon, but my last project, my last album was a few years ago. For me to record, mix, master, release, and market that album, I spent well over $10,000 out of my own pocket. And this is something that most fans or most consumers, they don't take into account when they listen to random songs, when they listen at all. They don't think about any of this. They just, which, as you would imagine, spending that type of money out of my own pocket, because obviously I'm not signed, that is not a easy task. That is a big investment to make. And to go through all, and also a big investment as far as time, because you're talking about something that could take months to years. And to go through all of that and to spend all of that, invest all of that, just for some faceless coward to go listen to the song for 10 seconds and turn around and leave a comment saying, "Oh, this sucks." I imagine if you were in the artist's shoes, how would you feel about that experience? Spotify put out an internal study about the data they were seeing when it comes to their users, and they alleged that their average user only listens to a new song for 7 seconds. How can you digest a song in 7 seconds? You can't. You legitimately can't digest a song in 7 seconds. But that's typically what most people are doing. They got the attention span of a gnat, so they're not even bothering to try to really listen to and digest the music. And because of that, they're they're gonna they're much more likely to critique the music in the way that they critique it now, which to me is bigger than the streamers. I know J. Cole, he's blaming streamers, but to me, that's bigger than streamers. That's really just the environment overall. Because again, an abundance of content being given to them for free or for $10 a month, and they have short attention spans anyway. They need constant dopamine hits. They also want to stick to whatever they already know. So with all that being the case, they're not really trying to digest anything they listen to. They'll give it 5 seconds worth of a listen, and they'll just make up their mind about it, even if they're wrong. Or even if, yeah, and even if they're wrong. Because if they had given it multiple listens, they might feel differently about it. But you'll never know, or at least they will never know. So, but as far as J. Cole is concerned, I think J. Cole, he does have a point, because just like how I'm saying most consumers have these tendencies, the same thing applies with a lot of streamers. Like they're not always, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them, they're not always really trying to listen to the music that they're actually playing or they're being recommended. They're skimming through it or half-heartedly listening like most people do. And that does play a role, but I mean, to me, the rabbit hole is pretty deep, because it all comes back to the era of LimeWire and Napster and stuff like that, to where once music became free, like there was a documentary, there was a short docu-series that came out last year on Paramount. It was called How Music Got Free. It's based on a book, but it's a docu-series chronicling the early 2000s, where you had a lot of you had, that's where piracy was becoming super popular, because you had Napster, LimeWire, people working at CD factories in the South. They were leaking bunch of artists' new albums and stuff like that. And even though there was a lot of benefits to people taking that approach and doing what they're doing and trying to help create some sort of decentralization to the internet, the downside, of course, is you opened up the floodgates. Now, I think it was inevitable, but still, you opened up the floodgates of people not valuing music anymore, because again, it's in overabundance to them. So they're not gonna have the same investment of somebody who's taking a bike 20 blocks down the street to go buy the new Michael Jackson album. That's not gonna be the case. But let me know, do you agree with J. Cole?